Found the security camera footage on a Tuesday, not because I was suspicious, not because some gut feeling told me to check. I found it because the motion sensor had been triggering alerts to my phone all morning while I was at work, and I figured the neighbor's cat had gotten into the backyard again. I pulled up the app at my desk, clicked on the bedroom camera, the one my son-in-law Oscar had helped me install 8 months earlier, right after the break-in on our street, and I sat there in my office at Hartwell Engineering for a long, quiet moment, looking at something I could not unsee. My wife, Renee, and Oscar. I didn't make a sound. My office door was open. Colleagues walked by. Someone said good morning. I smiled back. I don't remember doing it, but I must have, because nobody stopped to ask if I was okay. I closed the app. I put my phone face down on my desk. Then I picked it up again and made sure what I had seen was actually what I had seen. It was. I had been married to Renee for 31 years. Let me tell you something about 31 years. That's not just a number. That's the hospital waiting room at 2 in the morning when our daughter Cassie was born, and I held Renee's hand so hard she told me later I'd bruised her fingers. That's the summer we couldn't pay the mortgage and ate pasta 4 nights a week, and never once argued about it. That's every Christmas morning, every cross-country drive, every ordinary Tuesday that you never think about until suddenly Tuesday means something entirely different. Oscar had been Cassie's husband for 3 years. They'd met in graduate school in Austin, moved back to Phoenix to be closer to us, bought a house 12 minutes away. He was 34. He called me sir for the first 6 months until I told him to stop. He came to my retirement party. He shook my hand and told me I was the kind of father-in-law a man was lucky to have. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 45 minutes before I could drive home. I didn't go home. I drove to a park near the freeway and sat on a bench and watched pigeons for a while. I'm 58 years old and I sat on a bench watching pigeons because I genuinely did not know what else to do with my body. The first thing I felt was not rage. I want to be honest about that, because people expect rage, and it comes eventually. But the first thing was something quieter and more corrosive. It was the specific humiliation of realizing that while I was at work being ordinary, answering emails, reviewing load calculations, eating a turkey sandwich at my desk, my wife and my daughter's husband were in my bedroom in the middle of a Tuesday morning. In our house, the house I'd painted 3 times, the house with the leaky guest bath faucet I'd been meaning to fix, the house where Cassie had grown up. There's a particular kind of shame in being deceived in your own home. Like the walls themselves knew something you didn't. I did not confront them that night. I came home at 6:30 like always. Renee was making chicken piccata, which has been my favorite meal since 1994. I don't know if the timing was intentional or just the particular cruelty of coincidence, but I sat down at my own kitchen table and ate my favorite meal and said it was delicious, and I meant it, and I hated myself a little for meaning it. She asked about my day. I said it was fine. I asked about hers. Quiet, she said. Ran some errands. Had lunch with Beverly from book club. Beverly from book club. I nodded. I poured myself a second glass of iced tea. I said I was thinking about finally fixing the guest bath faucet this weekend. About time, she said, and laughed. That night I lay on my side of the bed we'd shared for 3 decades, and I listened to her breathe, and I thought about the footage. I had not deleted it. I had done something that surprised even me. I had forwarded it to my personal cloud storage, the one Renee didn't know about, before I'd even fully processed what I was watching. Some survival instinct. Some part of me that understood before the rest of me did that I was going to need it. I also checked the camera's history going back 3 months. It wasn't the first time. I want to tell you about Cassie, because she's important to this story in ways that broke me open far worse than anything Renee did. Cassie is 29. She has her mother's eyes and my stubbornness, which is a combination that has caused us both considerable trouble over the years. We are close in the way that fathers and daughters who butt heads are sometimes closer than the easy ones. We fought about everything when she was a teenager. Her curfew, her major, the year she wanted to drop out and move to Portland. And somewhere in all that friction, we built something real. She knew she could call me at 3 in the morning and I would answer. I knew she'd tell me the truth, even when I didn't want to hear it. Or, I thought I knew that. I spent 2 weeks gathering information before I said a single word to anyone. I contacted a family law attorney named Mr. Hirsch, a quiet, efficient man who wore reading glasses on a beaded chain and had clearly heard every possible variety of human disaster in his 30 years of practice. He told me Arizona is a community property state, that our assets accumulated during the marriage would be divided, and he walked me through what I needed to document. I documented everything: the camera footage, time-stamped, credit card statements showing hotel charges I hadn't noticed before, 3 of them, over the past 6 months, at a Marriott 20 minutes from our neighborhood on dates when Renee had told me she was visiting her sister in Tucson. Her sister, who called me on a Sunday in the middle of all this just to chat, and who mentioned in passing that she hadn't seen Renee in ages. You two should come visit. I noted the dates. I said nothing. I also, during this time, had a conversation with my financial advisor about moving certain accounts. I wasn't hiding assets. Mr. Hirsch was clear about the legal boundaries, but I was making sure I understood exactly what was mine, what was ours, and what I stood to lose if I walked into this blindly. I had a 401k, a pension from my first engineering firm, and an inheritance from my father that had been sitting in a separate account for 11 years, untouched. In Arizona, that inheritance was mine. Mr. Hirsch confirmed it. I want to be clear. I was not planning revenge at this point. I was planning survival. The revenge came later, and honestly, it wasn't planned at all. I told Cassie on a Saturday afternoon. I had rehearsed it. I had thought about exactly how I would say it, how I would stay calm, how I would present the information clearly and let her process it and be there for her however she needed me to be. She was going to be devastated. Her husband, her mother. I understood that. I was prepared for her to fall apart, and I was prepared to hold her together. I was not prepared for what actually happened. She looked at the footage. She watched it for about 15 seconds and then looked away and was quiet for a long moment. And then she said, "Dad, I don't think that's what it looks like." I stared at her. It could be, I don't know, it could be out of context. Cassie, I'm not going to just look at some clip and decide there are 17 separate recordings over 3 months, I said. I also have hotel charges and Dad. She stood up. She was pacing now. Dad, Oscar would not do this. I know him. I've been with him for 6 years. I thought about the parking garage, the pigeons, the chicken piccata. I kept my voice level. I know this is hard, I said. You don't know that, she said, and something in her voice shifted, became careful in a way I didn't recognize. You've been really stressed since you retired. Oscar mentioned it, actually. He said he was worried about you. A cold feeling moved through me. Worried, I said. How so? He said you'd been off, confused sometimes, forgetting things. She wouldn't look at me directly. He said he and Mom had both noticed. I sat very still. He thinks you might be showing early signs of something. She said it quickly, like removing a bandage. Cognitive decline. He looked it up. He said paranoia can be. He looked it up, I repeated. Dad, I'm not saying he installed that camera, I said. Oscar installed that camera. It's in our bedroom because he set it up. That landed. I watched it land. But then, something closed behind her eyes. I think you should talk to your doctor, she said. I drove home in a way I don't fully remember. I sat in the driveway for a while. Then I went inside, said hello to Renee, ate the leftover soup she'd reheated, and went to bed. That night I understood that there was a second betrayal happening, and it was going to hurt more than the first one. Over the next 2 weeks, it unfolded. Oscar told Cassie I had called him screaming with accusations, which I had not done. I had not contacted Oscar at all. Oscar told Cassie that I had shown up at their house and been incoherent, which also did not happen. I was 58 years old and retired, and apparently I had become, in Oscar's telling, a man losing his grip on reality. Cassie stopped returning my calls. I called her on a Wednesday night, and she answered and said she needed some space, that she was talking to her mother, that she was trying to figure out what was real. I asked if she had watched the rest of the footage. She said she wasn't sure the footage was reliable. I asked what that meant. She said Oscar had explained that security cameras can sometimes have timestamp errors and the metadata could be manipulated. I asked where Oscar had learned that. She hung up. I went to the kitchen. I poured a glass of water. I stood at the counter in my kitchen for a long time, and I thought about the man who had sat across from me at Thanksgiving and told me the turkey was perfect. The man who had asked my permission before he proposed to my daughter, not because he had to, but because he wanted to, he said, because he respected me that much. I thought about the word manipulation coming out of my daughter's mouth, and I thought about where it had come from. I thought about what it meant that he had installed the camera himself. Here is what Oscar did not account for. I have been an engineer for 32 years. My entire career has been about understanding systems, how they work, where they fail, and how to document everything so that when something goes wrong, you know exactly what happened and exactly when. I have written more technical reports than I can count. I understand metadata. I understand chain of custody. I understand that if you want something to hold up under scrutiny, you keep meticulous records, and you do it before anyone knows you're keeping them. I had forwarded that footage to cloud storage on the day I found it. The cloud service timestamps every upload independently. The camera's own logs had been exported and saved before Oscar could have known I'd seen anything. I had 3 independent records of the same files, with matching timestamps, stored on servers I controlled that he had never touched. When Mr. Hirsch reviewed everything, he said, "This is more thorough than most of what private investigators bring me." I said I used to build bridges. He didn't laugh, but his expression softened a little, which I think was his version of it. The divorce filing came on a Thursday morning. Renee was served at a Pilates class she'd been attending on Thursday mornings for 4 years, which I knew because she had a recurring calendar event for it. I'd seen it every week for 4 years and never given it a single thought until the morning I told Mr. Hirsch the schedule. I was told later that she cried in the parking lot. I don't feel good about that. I want to say I felt nothing, but that would be a lie. 31 years is 31 years. You don't stop caring about someone like a switch. You just reach a point where the caring doesn't change what you have to do. The security camera. People are going to ask about this, I know they are, so let me explain. After I filed for divorce, after Renee had moved out temporarily to stay with her sister in Tucson, her actual sister, this time, and after Oscar had apparently told Cassie some version of events that I can only imagine, I came home one afternoon to find that the bedroom camera had been removed, not just unplugged, physically taken. The mounting bracket was still on the wall. The bracket had a specific kind of screw that required a tool Oscar owned that he'd used when he installed it. He had come into my house while I was out. I don't know how. Renee still had a key, though I changed the locks the next morning. But he had come in and taken the camera. What he did not know, could not have known, was that the camera backed up continuously to cloud storage. Every moment of footage, from the day of installation to the day it was removed, was already saved. His visiting my house to retrieve it was merely inconvenient. It also happened to be captured on the doorbell camera, which he apparently forgot about, time-stamped. His car in the driveway, his face at the front door. Mr. Hirsch found that very useful. The moment I want to tell you about, though, the moment that I've thought about more than any other in this entire story, didn't happen in a courtroom or an attorney's office. It happened at a Costco. 6 weeks after I filed for divorce, I was in the paper towel aisle at the Costco on Camelback Road, and I ran into a couple I'd known from the neighborhood for about 12 years. Warren and his wife June, retired teachers, good people. They looked uncomfortable when they saw me. There was a brief exchange about how we were doing, the weather, nothing. And then June said carefully, "We've been hearing some things, and we just want you to know we don't believe any of it." I asked what they'd been hearing. She exchanged a look with Warren. "Just that you've been struggling, that Renee is worried about your health." I understood then what was happening. I understood that a story was being told around me, one I wasn't part of. One designed to explain and excuse and redirect. A story in which I was the problem. the unstable one, the sad older man having a difficult retirement. I looked at Warren and June in the paper towel aisle of a Costco, and I said, very calmly, I have documented evidence that my wife was having an affair with our son-in-law in our home over a period of months. I have retained a family law attorney and filed for divorce. The evidence has been reviewed by counsel and is sound. I'm not struggling. I'm fine. They did not know what to say to that. I put a package of paper towels in my cart and went to find coffee. Cassie called me on a Sunday night, 10 weeks after I'd shown her the footage. I almost didn't answer. I want to be honest about that. I answered. She didn't say hello. She said, I found something. She'd been going through Oscar's iPad. She'd had access to it for years. The passcode was her birthday, and she'd found a folder, not well hidden, just sitting there in the Photos app, which suggested he'd either gotten careless or simply hadn't thought she'd ever look. Photos and messages. Not involving Renee. Another woman entirely. Someone from his office. Going back 18 months. He had not just been with my wife. Cassie's voice on the phone was something I don't have words for. It was the voice of someone whose entire architecture of belief had collapsed at once, and she was standing in the rubble trying to find something solid. I should have looked at the footage, she said. Yes. A long pause. I'm sorry, Dad. I had promised myself I wasn't going to make this moment about me. I'd had 10 weeks to practice not doing that, and I mostly managed it. I know, I said. I know you are. She came over that night. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd eaten chicken piccata and said nothing, and I made coffee, and we talked until almost 2 in the morning. She cried. I cried. I am 58 years old, and I cried at my kitchen table with my daughter, and I am not embarrassed to say it. She asked me how I had stayed calm through all of it, how I had not screamed at her when she said what she said about cognitive decline. I told her I understood why she hadn't wanted to believe it. I told her that protecting the image of your marriage, even when the evidence is right in front of you, is a very human thing to do. I told her that I had watched her choose her husband's story over her father's, and it had hurt in a way I couldn't describe. And I also understood it, and we were going to have to carry both of those things for a while. She asked if I would ever fully forgive her. I said I was working on it, and that was the truest thing I could offer. The divorce was finalized 4 months after I filed. Arizona has a 60-day waiting period, and ours extended longer because of asset negotiations. But Mr. Hirsch was methodical and calm, and very good at his job. The marital home was sold. My father's inheritance remained mine. My pension and 401k were divided according to the formula, which was painful in a purely financial way, but not surprising. I had been prepared for it. Renee and Oscar did not stay together. I learned this not from Cassie, but from a mutual friend who mentioned it almost as an aside, the way people tell you things they think you already know. They had apparently ended things shortly after the divorce was filed, which did not surprise me. Affairs conducted in someone else's house, in someone else's bedroom, have a way of looking different once the house is gone. Cassie filed for divorce 3 months after I did. She's living on the other side of town now, in a 1-bedroom apartment she told me she loves, which I believe. She comes to dinner on Sunday nights when we're both free. She has started running again, something she'd given up years ago because Oscar didn't like to run, which is a detail that tells you something. Last month, she ran a 10K and texted me a photo of herself at the finish line with her number still pinned to her shirt. I have it as my phone wallpaper. I want to tell you about a moment from about 2 months ago. I was in the backyard early on a Saturday morning, the kind of quiet morning we get in Phoenix in late October when the heat has finally broken and the air feels like something you want to stay inside of. I had a cup of coffee. I was doing nothing in particular. And I noticed, on the back wall of the house, the empty spot where Oscar had mounted the camera bracket. I still hadn't patched the screw holes. I went inside and got spackle and a putty knife. I filled the holes. I sanded them smooth. I painted over the patch with the can of exterior paint I'd kept in the garage for 4 years for exactly this kind of small repair. It took about 20 minutes. I stood back and looked at the wall, and you couldn't tell anything had ever been there. I thought about 31 years, and about Cassie's voice on the phone, and about Warren and June in the Costco paper towel aisle, and about the Tuesday morning when everything changed, and about how the things that unmake you are almost never the things you prepared for. I thought about the fact that I was standing in my own backyard on a Saturday morning with a cup of coffee, and the house was quiet, and the air was cool, and nothing was pretending to be something it wasn't. Not the house, not the morning, not me. Renee used to say I was too practical, too methodical, that I treated everything like an engineering problem. She wasn't entirely wrong, but sometimes a problem needs to be treated like a problem. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is look at what's actually there instead of what you hoped was there. Document it carefully, consult the right people, and begin the slow, undramatic work of building something new on ground you actually trust. I am 58 years old. I live alone in a house with freshly patched walls and a working faucet in the guest bath. I finally fixed it 3 weeks after the divorce was filed, on an afternoon when I needed to do something with my hands. I have a daughter who texts me photos from finish lines. I have a second cup of coffee. I have, for the first time in a long time, a life in which what I see is what is actually there. That turns out to be worth quite a lot. People ask me sometimes what the hardest part was. They expect me to say it was finding the footage, or signing the divorce papers, or selling the house I'd lived in for over 2 decades. But the hardest part was sitting across from my daughter in my own living room, showing her the truth, and watching her choose not to see it. That's the part that doesn't get easier with time. It just gets more understandable, which is a different thing entirely. I've thought a lot about what actually happened in this story. Not the events, but the mechanics underneath them. Oscar didn't just betray Cassie, he planned ahead. He installed the camera himself, which meant he always knew it was there, and when things unraveled, his first move was to turn that camera into a weapon against me. He told my daughter I was confused, paranoid, declining. He built a version of me that couldn't be trusted, so that nothing I showed her would land the way it should. That's not a crime, but it's a particular kind of cruelty, taking the evidence of your own wrongdoing and using it to make the person who found it look unstable. What he didn't account for was that I had spent 32 years learning to document things properly. Not because I suspected him, not because I was clever, just because that's how I was trained to work. Carefully, thoroughly, before anything goes wrong. I didn't outsmart him. I just happened to already be the kind of person his plan couldn't work on. That's the part I want to sit with for a minute because I think it matters. The choices we make about who we are, how careful we are, how honest, how methodical. Those choices don't feel like protection in the moment we make them. They just feel like habits, like character. You document things because that's how you do good work. You keep records because sloppy records cause problems. You tell the truth because lying takes energy you'd rather spend elsewhere. None of that feels heroic. It's just how you move through the world when you've decided to be a certain kind of person. But then something terrible happens, and it turns out that being that kind of person is exactly what saves you. Not luck, not revenge, not rage. Just the accumulated weight of years of doing things the right way when nobody was watching. Cassie and I have talked about this. She asked me once if I thought she should have seen through Oscar sooner. I told her I think she trusted her husband the way a person is supposed to trust their husband, and that's not a flaw. The flaw was his. The failure of character was entirely his. Her mistake, if you want to call it that, was letting someone else's confident lies override what she could see with her own eyes. That's a very human mistake. I've made versions of it myself. What I told her was this: the world will always have people who are willing to construct a false version of events and deliver it with complete confidence. The only thing that works against that, long term, is knowing what you actually know, being so clear on what you saw, what you documented, what you can prove, that no amount of smooth talking can move you off it. That's not stubbornness, that's integrity. And it's something you build slowly, over years, by deciding again and again to stay honest even when dishonesty would be easier. I'm not the same person I was before that Tuesday morning. I don't think I could be. But I am, I think, a clearer one. The noise is gone. What's left is what's actually real. A daughter who runs 10Ks and texts me photos. A house with freshly patched walls. Mornings in October that belong entirely to me. That's enough. That's more than enough.